welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and these are my pets, George the Gorilla, the Hall the Dolphin, and Frank the Sea Turtle. After what seems like a hot minute, we now return to a franchise that I'm actually interested in becoming a fan of, Hellboy. So, as Guillermo Toro worked on other projects, the Hellboy franchise was something he wanted to continue visiting. How did he do that? Well, with two features that not a lot of people know about. As far as the history of how these animated productions came to be, I'm not exactly sure how. However, I can tell you that this was around the time where both Marvel and DC Comics made their deals to create animated features based on their stories. While Marvel's animated films releases didn't get that great reviews or last long, DC's animated films still go strong to this day, with the overall epic conclusion being the Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy. So what I assumed happened was the want to expand upon Hellboy due to the critical success of the first film from 2004. Attached to make these two animated projects were Guillermo del Toro and Mike Mignola, who of course directed the film and created the comics respectively, but also Tad Stones, best known for his work on Darkwing Duck. The films would also be produced by Film Roman, Revolution Studios, and Stars Media, all of whom were experienced in animation work. The first of these two films was released on October 28, 2006, and aired on Cartoon Network sometime later the same year. It received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Animated Program for programming 1 hour or more, which means it must have been pretty good. Right? We're going to find out today if you take candor at Hellboy Animated, Sword of Storms. In this story, the most powerful member of the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, Hellboy, voiced by Ron Perlman, is trapped within the world of ancient Japan, carrying an ancient sword where demons are trapped, tied to a long-deceased daimyo, princess, and samurai. Ancient monsters are soon to be brought up from the underworld by a possessed professor, which not only affects Hellboy but the world around him. With the help of Abe Sapien and Liz Sherman, voiced by Doug Johnson and Selma Blair, it's up to Hellboy and the BPRD to end this nightmare before the world is overtaken. Right off the bat, my favorite character of this movie was Hellboy himself. Once again, Ron Perlman delivers a very dry and straight performance, which is exactly like Hellboy is supposed to act based on some of the comics I have read. It's clear that he's not as surprised at the strange events that are going on around him due to his job with the BPRD, but it's hilarious to see him in the hilarious circumstance anyways, because it's freaking Hellboy, and I admire his ways of handling situations. His constant lack of interest always left me with a big smile on my face, and made me feel like I was watching an actual living, breathing character. As far as the other characters go, I was really happy to see that in this movie, Liz Sherman was far more interesting and fleshed out. She acts like the annoyed yet determined younger sister of the group, and we get to see her use her powers in a more satisfying way. If this is how they are going to portray her in the sequel to the live-action movie, I'm very much looking forward to it, without a doubt. As far as Abe goes, he was hilarious as he was in the live-action movie. His intelligence still makes him absolutely hilarious, and all of his jokes crack me up too. This is also the first time Doug Jones voices Abe in the franchise, as David Hyde Pierce wanted to give Doug the opportunity to fully play the character, which was for the better, because as much as I like David's voice in the first movie, Doug just is Abe Sapien, and it was the best move for his character. As far as other characters go, we have Kate Corrigan and Russell Thorne. These two are kinda mediocre. Kate's a pretty decent addition as a skilled doctor, but Russell was just the annoying comic relief. He wasn't the worst, but none of his shenanigans were particularly funny nor memorable to even mention, so I'll end it there. After that, I don't have much to say. The other characters in this aren't exactly really characters and are more like plot devices. The only one that had real conviction was the Kitsune, partly because she's voiced by Gwendolyn Yao. But other than that, none of the characters were memorable nor great, and that's the biggest negative about this one. However, at least the main three heroes were great in everything they did. Now, as far as the animation goes, this reminded me a lot of my all-time favorite superhero animated show featuring my all-time favorite Marvel hero, and one of my all-time favorite animated series of all time, The Spectacular Spider-Man. But that's not at all a complaint. I'm a huge fan of this art style, and I like it a lot in this movie because each character has a distinct and unique design. Yes, it does look like a lot like Spider-Man, but it came out around the same time, and one was inspired by the other, so it doesn't matter to me. As far as the music goes, it was composed by Christopher Drake, whom I had known going into this movie, as he's done a lot of DC animated scores, including some of my favorite ones. And not only did he take Marco Beltrami's original style from the live-action film, but he also created a style of his own. So I have to congratulate him for doing so, because it sounds pretty great. Now, as far as action sequences go, there's this feeling that they brought the 2004 movie's action and adapted it here, because Hellboy still battles with most of his strength, and that was one of the best parts about it. I think his battle with the Kappa and the floating heads were the best battles in the movie overall. So, while it has some flaws, Hellboy's Sword of Storms is a pretty damn good and fun little movie that further interests me in Hellboy as a character. It's fast-paced, has pretty decent story, and is just so much fun. This is definitely one I will see myself revisiting someday soon, which is why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. As someone whose first exposure to Hellboy was the 2004 live-action movie, I was on board to see how other projects based on the character would be handled, and lo and behold, the storyline in this movie really makes me long for an animated series starring these characters with this art style. If this adventure was this much fun, imagine how much fun its sequel is going to be, or how much fun other adventures are going to be. Obviously, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and it made me want so much more from these characters and this world. So, let's continue our discussion and see what makes this movie work. Well, that's all I have to say about this first one. Tune in next week when I take a look at its follow-up. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap.